Thank you for those great insights. It does all start with a great solid foundation. One of the premises of the work we're doing here, as we've said, is the full lifespan. This was early brain development, and you can see the importance of starting early. We're now going to hear from the Workplace Years team, and it will be moderated by Crystal Sexton. I invite you all to come forth. Crystal Sexton is the founder and CEO of Cognitive Capital Group. She is a global expert in brain and workforce health. She helps organizations translate mental and brain health into measurable business performance and has advised leaders at the UN, G7, and the World Economic Forum. At this point, I will turn it over to Crystal.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I just want to say before we get started that I was at the first one of these in Atlanta that had about 30 people, so it's pretty inspirational to see how much it's grown, and I want to give a lot of acknowledgement to David Gow and the team, and to Harris, wherever he may be, and George Vredenberg, who's right here, for growing this to what it is. So we're going to talk for the next 30 minutes about workplace brain health, and I think most of you know we spend a lot of time as adults at work. Approximately 90,000 hours of our lives are spent in the workplace. And I'm an epidemiologist. I firmly believe that work is a determinant of health. And I believe the workplace is a great place to prevent negative health outcomes. And so we're going to spend some time talking about that, specifically around brain health. And I'm going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves and give a really quick overview of the work that they do and how it focuses on the workplace.
I'm Natalie Richardson. I'm the director of HabLab, which is our innovation lab at Slalom Consulting, focused on the future of work, habits, and habitats. So HabLab, Habits and Habitats Lab, and we're passionately focused on the human side of work and where to turn the dial up on humanness while simultaneously turning the dial up on AI skilling and upskilling.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Crystal. So my name is Orlando Alvarez, and I am the president and chairman and president of BP America. So BP, hopefully most of you know BP, oil and gas company. This is a high hazard, high risk business that we're in. Mental health for me, safety, performance, foremost it's safety. So we have to have that in order. So that's where, for me, it hits home, but obviously performance, and there's other aspects to it as well. But yeah, it's very important to us, and we have a focus on it.
Hi, I'm Nikki Hellam. You may have seen Debbie's photo up. I'm actually filling in for her. And when I was talking to David earlier, nobody can replace Debbie Beck, but I'm going to do my best. So I'm an associate principal with Perkins & Will, and we do a lot of research in neuroscience and neuroarchitecture and how the built environment really affects our brain health and what that affects and how we can actually, perform better under certain built environments and how that really affects us.
Good morning. Jason Schroer here. I'm Executive Vice President at HKS. We're a global architecture firm, and I'm here kind of talking from two different perspectives, one as an employer, but also as someone who really believes that design can make a difference, right? And we're getting very close, in many cases, to be able to prove it. So when we think about design, we try to think about it from an outcomes perspective. And that's really important for us in the way that we serve our clients. If you think about it, like this room is a great example of that. How terrible would it be if we were in a dark ballroom right now with artificial lighting? The fact that we can see outside and we have natural light, I think makes a huge difference in our cognitive function. And I think those are the types of design kind of aspirations that we look for to support brain health.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so let's kick it off with some of the questions for you. I know one of the things that I hear a lot is, what do we mean by brain health? And what are we talking about specifically in the workplace? So what are the key messages that you guys would like to get across to employers, to leaders, and employees about workplace brain health? Go ahead, Orlando. You look ready to go.
Yeah, so again, with BP, this is when we talk about brain health, and again, so I'm BP America chairman and president, but I also run BP's trading organization, high stress, and then there's also high risk, whether you're in a refinery, whether you're offshore. It's both for me. So safety, you want you want brain health so that people are focused, they're not distracted. It's performance. It correlates with performance. Healthy minds. I mean, people they want to think right. They're going to think right. They're going to be motivated. They're going to be focused. So yeah, I think that. And then, really, it's about caring for your people, right? I mean, you want to care for your people. And I speak from example. Everybody has some mental health in their life. I truly believe that. So it hits everybody. Yep.
Yeah, I'll follow up. I think we want to let people know that brain health is not a wellness initiative. It's a workplace performance. It's resilience. It's innovation. It is an economic strategy. Your employees that have healthy brain health means organizational performance is going to increase. It impacts retention, sustainability. We spend so much of our lives in our workplace. We should be thriving, not just surviving. And so also kind of what Jason was saying as far as the built environment, we can make changes to help brain health. So a lot of times we're designing for trauma-informed and neuro-inclusivity for buildings, just like Jason said, daylighting. And so we want to let employers know there's things you can do with your built environment to optimize your brain health. If you feel safe, you're going to perform better. If it removes stress, reduces fatigue, all of those types of things. And so with that, it's, again, not a wellness initiative, but truly workplace performance for brain health.
For us, it's really around the human identity side of the workplace and navigating the constant uncertainty that is in our modern workplaces today, and knowing that what that uncertainty does to the brain and how that uncertainty can result in nervous system dysregulation for people who are nervous about showing up to work and knowing that their job will still be there, or that their skill set is still relevant, that their identity that they've held for many years in a certain profession is still needed. And so we think about brain health in that way of how do you create psychological safety on teams and in intense or normal work environments where people can thrive and talk to their colleagues about the uncertainty that they're facing and how to be more adaptable, and the trickle-down effect that has to the entire organization.
Yeah, I think it's just a combination of those things. I think for us, it starts with policy, so you're really talking about it so people understand it. There's training involved. We partnered with the Center for Brain Health and did some voluntary training for our staff coming out of COVID. And we learned techniques and things that we could do as part of our work day to have a higher level of cognitive kind of presence, but also to take breaks when we need to and do those things that are important for us during the workday. So it's policy, design, and attitude. And then it all comes down to leadership. We have certain offices that have a higher kind of level of performance than others, and it starts with leadership.
Jason, I have a follow-up question to that, because we spent a lot of time yesterday actually talking about the built environment and rituals, right? And how do you build a habit? So when you're talking about that and the brain health practices that we can do, how do those impact, like from a built environment perspective? What are you guys thinking about when you think about the rituals to really enhance brain health with the employees from the physical space?
Yeah, that's the loaded question, right? And we don't know all of it yet, but what we do know is people learn from different styles. People work at different paces. People need certain levels of separation or togetherness based on what their job is. And so looking at environments where we can provide opportunities for people to make choices on whether they want to work in a quiet space today versus a collaborative space tomorrow, I think makes a huge difference in your ability to kind of support all those differences that we have that individuals bring to the workplace. And so trying to figure out that sweet balance between me space and we space and everything in between to nurture, those opportunities for interaction or isolation.
So a lot of my work over the past 15 years is focused on the organizational factors that drive business outcomes that drive individual employee health and team health. And we know that some of those can be a positive influence and some can be a negative influence. Where I think we reach challenges is a lot of this stuff is geared toward office workers. So I'm really curious from you guys who have sort of a disparate workforce and especially Orlando, like a dispersed workforce, like how do you reach those hard to reach populations?
Yeah, it hasn't been easy. I see a couple of our, our chief medical officers in the audience, BP, and another one of our physicians, and I hope they know that leadership at BP takes it serious. That's one thing. I think they want to see leadership. You send an email to 38,000 employees that we have in the U.S. Some people use that. They say mental health, brain health. What are they going to do? Let's call it. They're not going to pay a lot of attention to it. But when you start holding training sessions, which we do, and not about me, but leaders start showing up, start talking about it. You bring it up at town halls. You bring up actual personal stories. Employees start connecting to it to say, and then you actually, I remember in a town hall, I said, anyone in here doesn't have mental health or brain health anywhere that doesn't touch them? Because I do, personally. And you start making it real. That connects. Training sessions, I think we have a training session at BP that I took. It's a 5-module training session. My leadership team took it, most of them started rolling it out. People started connecting with it. And now it's not just a buzzword. And now we can follow through with programs that we have, whether it's nutrition, whether it's fitness, whether it's the things that our medical group is doing. So now it all ties. Yeah. Now that helps, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell this story a lot when I speak, but I'll give this really quick anecdote about these sort of hard to reach populations. And more than a decade ago, I was visiting a site, and the health and safety manager had asked me to stay the next day to go to their job task meeting. And so I showed up there at the site, and it's all men, all in their like fire retardant uniforms, and they were going through kind of these safety tasks. And the health and safety manager had said, "We're doing calisthenics. You're going to love it. You're into physical activity." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So they're going through all these job things and what's required of the day and safety stuff. And then there was a leader who led the calisthenics, and they started doing that, and immediately the tenor of the entire group changed. Everybody was laughing, they're joking with each other, making fun of each other's arm rolls, or people who couldn't touch their toes, or making fun of me because I was in a dress and I wasn't supposed to be doing the calisthenics and all these things. And at the very end, they got together in this huddle, and the leaders does this little chant thing, and they all high-fived, and then the leader collapsed, like screaming guttural primal crying. And it was horrific. And so people are trying to ask him what's happening. Is he okay? And when he stood up and he was finally able to speak, he said, "My brother and sister-in-law and their 2 kids were murdered over the weekend. And this is the first time in days that I've laughed or smiled. I love you guys." And everybody was crying and everybody was hugging. And at the end of that, I said to the manager, I said, "This isn't about calisthenics. It's not about an add-on. It's not about a program. You've created a culture where somebody's comfortable being vulnerable, especially in this difficult population." And so thinking about that, what is the role of organizational culture from you guys' perspective on brain health and mental health in the employees? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, we see it as like these kind of micro moments or rituals, to the point of the activity with that built that much psychological safety. We see it as a way to build what we call like marble jar moments. You may have heard this from Dr. Brene Brown, but you think of this big empty jar that we each have for one another, whether you're a stranger or somebody that you've known for a long time, and you might have a bunch of marbles in that jar with one person and none with the other. And how do you build every little moment of trust adds a marble to that jar. So when you have a really difficult meeting or moment or project that you're trying to navigate, or a horrible personal issue, the personal challenge you're going through, you can call on that marble jar, that trust that you have with those people. And marbles come out certain times when there's a difficult situation, and you add marbles back in. So thinking about how do you build marble jar moments with your colleagues and your teams, and how leaders can demonstrate that in the small and the big ways and build psychological safety along the way.
I love that.
I would add to that. Leaders need to be transparent and bring down the stigma of mental health, and being able to speak to your employers and your peers and other leaders candidly, because as the previous panel mentioned, human connection is what we need. Everyone's brains and brain health. And so being able as leaders to pull down that stigma, to have those candid and honest and trustworthy conversations, that's what makes your work day even better, because then you can connect humanly to each and every one of your employees and your peers. And so I think with that that's really bringing down the stigma, is what we can do as leaders.
I mean, not to quote Dr. Brene Brown again, but I mean, vulnerability is the foundation of creativity, right? So we're a creative company, and so we've really got to create, those moments for that vulnerability to happen. And it starts with leadership, right? That, if your leadership is demonstrating a certain amount of vulnerability in terms of how they may be dealing with certain circumstances or how they may approach certain problems, I think it's important for those around to see that, and it creates that kind of embedded trust for you to really then roll your sleeves up and be creative.
Yeah, and I think, okay, this is a great segue for the next question, right, about leadership and how do we convince them that brain health is important. And Orlando, I've got to acknowledge you here, because I've done a million of these panels, and rarely do we actually have a senior leader here to speak about it. And so I'm just curious, from your own experience, how were you convinced that this is worthwhile, and how do you convince your other leaders around you?
Yeah, it goes back to, and again, Dr. Turner's in the audience here. I'm looking at him going, he was the force behind this, one of our BP physicians that came to me and our CMO as well, to say, they didn't have to convince me. It was like, again, I'll say it again, all of us, this touches all of us, right? Brain health. And then there's obviously the mental, for me, again, I'm not a physician here, but there's the mental health. I think that, I have a personal story, family story around that, but then there's the brain health. There's that, and then there's the brain health for performance and safety. All the things that, quite frankly, I just completed my 30 years at BP last week, and we've never really had that focus on it. Now we do. And so other leaders, whether it's the board or whether it's our U.S. leadership team that I chair, we start talking about it, and and then we start having training sessions, and they attend them, and you start seeing, we have a global well-being program at BP, incentivizes, and promotes brain health, things like that. So the more you see it, the leaders start talking about it. It didn't take leaders, it didn't take my peers or a long time to catch on. I think I'm not so worried about the leadership team. I'm worried about how do you get it through the organization? How do you get it to touch everybody? And it starts with leadership walking the talk. And people don't want to see it fake. It's got to be authentic. If you're going to fake it, don't do it as a leader either. So that's my take.
I'm going to come at it from two perspectives, one from an employer, but then also from the design side. As far as trying to integrate it, it's really an investment to your organization. It will reflect on retention and workforce performance, productivity, resilience, innovation, creativity. So it needs to be there. It's brain capital. It's going to give you that reinvestment into your organization. Speaking on the design side and creativity, because that's what we do, and as architects and designers, small investments that aren't going to really hit your capital can be done to help the brain health of your employees. So if it's in lighting, acoustics, giving people their own task lighting if they need it, based on their own brain health and neurodivergence. Those small things, or even creating a small space, what we call like brain break rooms that have, if it's natural daylight, biophilia elements, softness and acoustics, a soft seating area, those types of things that you can put into your spaces will then reinvigorate those brain health and those things that you need in the workplace to then come back and be innovative and creative, whether you're working on technology or you're in the childhood development stage or wherever you may be. Having those spaces really help that brain health and integrates that and influxes into your workforce and organization.
Something we talk a lot about is obviously the upskilling of AI. That's obviously for all of us. And we focus specifically on where do we need to turn the dial up on humanness? What is uniquely human that we cannot lose in this era? We spent a lot of time talking about this yesterday with Google XI. And it is now more than ever, we need to be focusing on and fiercely protecting the humanness in the workplace. And we see that as the brain health aspect of that. How do we invest in people's psychological safety, mental health, physical health, emotional health, all components of who they are at work, who they are as a human being, because that is the differentiator in these changing times of AI becoming more and more part of our workplace.
I have one question before we get to our lightning round. But I'm an epidemiologist. I firmly believe that data are really important, and I would be very remiss not to mention my colleague and very dear friend who's in the room here today, Mario Carvalho from Shell, who did and led a lot of the analysis that led that organization to the findings that have been very critical for employee health. And so I feel quite strongly that to build a strong business case and to show the leaders that this matters, we have to have a solid base of data and results. And so I'm just curious, from your perspectives, how does the data influence it, and what are you collecting in the brain health space?
I'll touch on a little bit. We've done some research, and actually HKS has as well, in terms of things that we are finding. It's still early, but we're still finding other things in terms of the built environment in brain health. Jason touched on this, but like high ceilings actually help with divergent thinking and creativity. So spaces that are built around that, or if you need that closed focus space, like more times the ceilings are lower, lighting is lower, depending on what you're doing. So we're doing a lot of research behind how the built environment is going to affect brain health. Also, as you come into spaces, if you're new to it, clear wayfinding and calmness will help in terms of, and we take a lot, both in healthcare, but workplace and higher education, K-12 education, and for trauma-informed design, and how the brain reacts to a space that you go into. And so if it's too bright of lighting or it's too confusing, your subconscious is going to actually react negatively versus if it's a calmer, easy wayfinding, that type of thing. So we're doing a lot of research in the built environment that way with brain health.
So we have what we call Pulse Live, and it's an opportunity for our employees to put in, basically, we got engagement scores, are you confident of where the company's going? And then you have a comment section, and they can put whatever they want in there. It's anonymous. And so we get data as to how, what's the pulse of the organization, how do employees feel, and then we'll get a few trends and where are we trending, and we'll address that. Again, as someone that's been around the company a long time, I don't know, you sort of feel it, whether it's the innovation. I think you mentioned innovation, creativity. I think if you want to perform at the next level, that means you want people to be feeling like they can innovate, they can create, they feel confident, not just going through the motions. And so I think that's sort of my gauge. If you have strong, if people feel good, another word, I guess, feel good, or their brain, their mental state is good, they're going to perform at the highest caliber. That's the way I take it. And they're going to be safer. And in our business, that's number one. So I don't have the data, the numbers, but I sort of know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think much of the area of typology of building that I've focused on in my career, which is healthcare, science, and education, evidence-based design, right? And so it's this idea that we can improve certain outcomes perhaps, or correlate at least design moves to outcomes. And I'll use a example quickly. Dr. Nanda can fact check me later, but we did study years ago about nursing in patient care units. And the nurses that along their journey of caregiving were able to see outside and kind of understand what time of day it is, get daylight, look at the weather, feel grounded, their cognitive ability went up, right? And so what we learned from that was a lot in terms of design interventions that we can do to increase a better working environment for nursing. But what you want to correlate it to is, well, then if their cognitive ability is up, will errors go down, right? And that's really where we want to start going with this, is how can we connect all of that together? Because that's ultimately, where I think the data can really make a difference.
We partner closely with the Wharton Neuroscience Initiative, as Dr. Johnson's here. And in our studies with them, we have done several different iterations of team dynamics. And one of them that's my favorite is around teams that are remote. And how do you form workplace friendships, workplace relationships remotely? And in our study, we found that you can form workplace relationships that the brain understands as the same type of friendship or connection remotely as you can in person. It just takes a little bit of different types of engagement, questions, building more psychological safety in different ways. And so something we've studied with our own employees is how do you build workplace friendships? Since, to your point, Orlando, people who are so focused on just survival at work, your brain actually cannot be innovative or creative at all. You're just focusing on survival from the back of your brain. And so we are trying to build new ways of connection and friendship so that people can be operating from that place in their brain where they can be the most creative selves.
I love that. So, all right, final question, guys. Lightning round. We talked a lot yesterday about actionable steps. So what are one concrete step from each of you that you would recommend to the audience for workplace brain health?
For burnout.
Hold leaders accountable. Hold them accountable. If you're going to make it a focus, starts at the top. So I think we are trying to do that as we speak at BP. Make it a focus, and then I also say give the employees the tools to learn what it's about, and I think we're doing that as well. Yeah.
To build on that, I would say that this is something anyone can do, whether you're a leader right out of college, starting your career, is 5-minute brain breaks. Do it 5 times a day. You'll come back more innovative and creative. And a brain break being, don't take your phone, don't take any headphones, no technology. Literally let your brain just relax. It's not engaged. You just let it go. 5 minutes, 5 times a day. That is something you can do. And as leaders, we can show those to our employees and say, I'm taking my 5-minute brain break. I'll come back to you in a minute. And then that will trickle down. So that would be my tip.
Related, I would say rituals. How does your team talk about brain health in the context of its team rituals and team norms? And another study we did with Wharton is around chronotype. What time of the day are you at your best? What time of the day is your brain its most creative, innovative self versus the time that you want to be heads down versus being with the team and brainstorming together? So creating rituals and talking about it, putting language to brain health so that the team is comfortable and the leaders are comfortable sharing what that means in real time and it means something for them.
I just say walk the talk, right? We have 29 offices globally. A handful of those are living labs where we're actually measuring outcomes through behavior. We're actually going to be doing very quickly and soon in our Dallas office, we're going to be wearing the crowns and measuring brain activity for certain things. And we really want to learn from that. And what can we learn that can help us be better stewards of our staff and employees, but also what can we share with the world that will make, workplace a better place for everybody?
Well, thank you guys so much for an engaging panel. We do not have time for questions, but if you want to find us, you talk to us, we'll be here, all of us, all day long. So thank you.